How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Guys, great show coming your way. We are going to be talking about 10 tips to help you when making rank. This is great. I think it's going to be a great dialogue. If you stay for the whole episode, there'll be 11 tips, one bonus one. So it's going to be great, guys. I'm going to have two guests on the show with me. I'm going to have our regular, Connie Alleyne, and we're also going to have a favorite of mine from my past. She's never been on the show before, but she's a big part of my motivation in remaining in correction. She was one of my supervisors. And the funny thing is, guys, in a prison, when you work in a negative environment, you always follow that person with the smile because that person kind of reminds you that there's better things to come. She's that person. So I'm just totally humbled to have her on the show. Her name is Celeste Evans. She's a retired major for State Department of Corrections. And trust and believe, guys, her tips, same thing as Connie. Listen, because there's value behind what's being said. Just want to introduce my sponsors real quick. Guys, we have American Military University. If you guys get a chance and you're looking to pursue a higher education, get that degree, please check out American Military University. It's a great school, online, very supportive of what we do on Tier Talk, also very supportive of the corrections profession. We also have Guardian RFID. Today's video is brought to you by Guardian RFID. From inmate tracking and cell checks to cloud-based business and artificial intelligence, Guardian RFID digitally transforms jails, prisons, and juvenile detention facilities of every size. Visit GuardianRFID.com for more information. And guys, they do have a YouTube channel. We do put videos up for them as well. So check it out, Guardian RFID. Again, it's a YouTube channel. And guys, we got a new sponsor. I'm excited. We're going to welcome them to the family. And the new sponsor is Cheya. And it's spelled C-E-I-A. So Tier Talk is sponsored by Cheya USA. Cheya USA is the world's leading weapon, cell phone, and contraband detection system manufacturer for corrections. For more information, contact Joe Vasquez at 440-561-7615. He's a subject matter expert. He's passionate about our industry, and he will take good care of you. Mention Tier Talk. And if you guys are looking for good metal detectors, good equipment to check on contraband, mention that Tier Talk sent you, and Joe will work with you. Trust and believe that. Now, guys, let me bring Connie on first. Hello, Connie. You're muted. Ha! Ha!
Look at that. So here it is. I was trying to do the right thing. I've got the dog outside. I've got Kendall out. And so anyways, I'm excited to be here because it's been a week or two since we've done a show together. So,
Connie, you've left me in the desert looking for water.
Oh, you cut it out. Cut it out.
Yeah.
That is so not true, guys.
Guys, she's busy, guys, but I'll tell you something, busy making a difference in this profession, so I'm willing to give her the day off. You know what I mean? I don't know if she even, but she is making a huge difference. And Connie, speaking of that difference, how's everything's going? Business women being recognized, Civilian Correction Academy, how things going for you?
So things are going good, so the academy is now, I think we're up to 22 states now, and we continue to grow, and that's exciting, and continuing to just align the business in a way that allows for us to do as much as we can, and so that's exciting too. And then I did get the recognition, so I appreciate the women we admire. I was nominated for the top 100 women leaders in Connecticut, and I didn't think I was going to get that, but I'm like, wow, look at you. You made so I think it's just an honor to be recognized to begin with, but to actually be awarded one of those top 100 slots was just, to me, so I don't know. I had to reflect on that because I just couldn't believe it. But I think it just.
But Connie, Connie, you deserve all this goodness. And guys, I know someone watching this show is the 101, and I'm sorry. Connie has a right to be happy.
I was number 78, I must say. Okay. So I wouldn't have necessarily bumped out number 101, but I am actually I'm glad that this is something that, after you kind of pour yourself into something over a period of time, you just don't you think you hope everyone loves it. It's almost like you have a baby and they're like, oh, your baby's kind of ugly. And you're like, what? My baby's ugly, right? but the fact that like, here it is, I birthed this curriculum and people are like, this is awesome, Connie. Where'd you get this from? I'm like, my head. So I just did the math actually for the sake of MASCA. I did the math. I have actually been working over 35,000 hours in this profession. Insanity. I was like, so where does this come from, right? Because usually they say it takes 10,000 hours. There's this golden rule, right? 10,000 hours for you to be considered this expert in your space, right? And so it's like 35,000 hours and counting, because that was just my years of service and operations and that kind of stuff. That's not like the podcasting, the panels, the discussions, the events and all that other stuff. So like, just to think that I'm sure you're always on. So I'm sure.
Well, I'm doing the math now. 40 hours a week times 52 minus 3 weeks vacation. Yeah, Connie. I don't know what the hell happened with that math, but hey, Connie. Before we bring in the other guests, I wanted to got the books. How's the book going?
So I am the founder and president of the Civilian Corrections Academy. I'm also the podcast host of The Fly Behind the Wall. And I'm also the author of The Cage Was Her Cocoon. And the book is just doing its own thing. It's selling. It's got its own life happening. And, I've got some book club presentation stuff coming up, some fireside chats with Connie. Very interesting how the book is taking on its own life too. So I'm definitely a little busy, but it's all good.
Well, it's like you, it takes initiative. Okay, so yeah. All right, so now, all right, guys, as I mentioned, I was just an officer, last time I saw her, she was a major. Actually a lieutenant at first in operations, if I remember. And again, just always happy, always smiling. And it was great for us to reconnect. What thought about me having her on the show was she's been so supportive of what we're doing on the social media platforms. She's always been, just whether it's liking or just putting a lovely comment to keep us motivated. Again, I'm working on another book now. She provided a quote for the book. And, guys, by the way, Inmate Manipulation Decoded available. Link in the description. Forgot to mention that. But I want to have her introduce herself. So, Celeste Evans, there you are. I know you as Celeste Cunningham.
Yes. I went back to my maiden name.
There it is. No, we don't have to go. Just wanted you to know, But do you mind, again, I'm quite humble. I want people to know something. No matter how far you move in a profession, how up or whatever it is, you always remember the people that have an impact. So it always humbles you. Trust and believe that. So it's kind of humbling here to have you on, because as I said, last time we talked, you were 2 steps above me. So, and just a great leader and supervisor. So would you mind introducing yourself? And also, you're retired. I believe you're into travel now. Do you mind just introducing yourself to our audience?
Yes. First of all, thank you very much for having me on. I'm honored to be here and to share any tips, anything I can do to help someone else in their career. I'm hoping it's a career for most people and not just a job. Certainly, I think you'll get more out of it if it's a career and not just a job, not just a paycheck for you. But I'm retired since 2015. I did invest in my passion, which is travel. So I started a travel business a few years ago. And of course, with the COVID years, it was really tough, but the business is great. And I get to travel and meet people and help them realize their travel dreams. So I'm very happy with that. So C Celestial Travel Services is happy to service any of your travel and entertainment needs.
Okay, just to say it again, what's the name of the travel company again? You have a card? There it is. Let me see that. Wait, hold on. Let me put it on the big screen. Hold on. Celestial Travel Services. How can we find that?
I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. You can reach me here.
Hold on. Let me zoom in.
Website.
There it is. Pause if you guys want that information. There it is.
Yes, but I'm not here to do a shameless plug for my business. I'm here to help these people, anyone who's wanting to advance in their law enforcement career.
Well, but by the way, guys, I mean, it's not about the shameless plug. It's the fact that you could retire and pursue a dream.
Yes.
Or support someone in the profession who's pursuing their dream. No greater gift than doing that as well. Hey, before we start, Celeste, I just wanted to get maybe, just a little bit of your trajectory as an officer. When did you start? How did you, where did you retire when you completed your career?
Okay, well, I started as a correction officer recruit in 1990 at Northern State Prison. I worked at Northern State Prison for 15 years, where I had promoted to sergeant. And then I moved on to promote to lieutenant at Edna Mayan Correctional Facility, where I met you, Tony. I then went on and promoted up to major, where I ended my career after 25 years and 3 months.
And did you end at Edna Mayan?
Yes, I did.
You did. So me and you. So I'm on my 4th prison, but I spent. I don't talk specific, guys, so I'm not giving anything specific. But I did spend 7 years at your first prison, and then 9 years, or 8 years and 9 years. So we've kind of, worked kind of together in the same areas. It's pretty cool, right? I think.
So I think you understand me a little bit better, having worked at my former facility, my first.
Oh, you're talking about the one I spent 7 years at just recently?
Yes.
Oh yeah, that I've learned a lot there. I can't.
Yeah,
it's helping me where I'm at now.
You can't help but
by the
learn
way,
there.
The roads I've been given have been challenging, but they're fun. And again, you get someone like this to follow, so that's great. So, okay, so guys, it's going to be a great dialogue. Thanks for, kind of going through the beginning of this. It's just, pretty cool to meet somebody that you respect. And obviously, then we also have another superstar with us, Connie. I'm surrounded by celebrities here. I don't know what to do. It's crazy. Oh, there's Connie with the eye roll. I saw that. All right, guys. So we do have 10 tips, a bonus if you stay for the 11th one. So what I want to do, guys, is this show is for people that don't just want to make rank, but get promoted. So we're going to touch on 2 sides here. We're going to touch on maybe something that's a little custody driven, because it could be a little bit different. But I also want Connie's input on the civilian side of things, because that could also be a little bit different. But I do believe we share a lot of commonalities, and that's why the tips could be applied to both worlds. So again, guys, it's going to be 10 tips to help you when making rank. Now, we've covered this before, but it's always good to have different perspectives. So what I'll do first is I'm going to go to Celeste first, because the first tip that you have, I think, is a great foundation to begin the dialogue. And it's called, the tip is, decide if corrections is supposed to be is a job or a career. And I'll fix that. But Celeste, what's your thoughts on this?
My thoughts are, initially when I started, I have to be transparent, it was a job. A few years in, probably about 3 years in, I decided it was going to be my career. Right. So I had started as a correction officer recruit, as I said. And actually, when I started, there was a lapse in promotional opportunities. Like, there wasn't a promotional exam for maybe like 6 years, I think it was. So that's not the norm now. They're doing it a little more frequently now than they did then. So my tip is, I needed to sign up and prepare for that promotional exam. So I had to make sure I was ready when they gave the promotional exam.
So Celeste, what makes it, what in the mindset of somebody? So a job or a career, what's the difference between the two? If I'm going in for a job, what makes me different than someone that's going in looking at it as a career?
Well, I just think that for myself, when it was just my job, I was going to work every day, collecting my paycheck like everyone else. But when I decided, or was thinking of what impact I was going to have on the department, what I was going to leave behind as my legacy, that's when I started thinking of it as a career.
Yeah, I think that's great, guys, because obviously coming in, maybe as we start to understand the job, we start to realize that there's a lot of opportunities that we could stretch into, whether it's lateral or, as you said, moving up. And Connie, I mean, for you, Connie, obviously being involved, you moved up as well, like Celeste. I mean, was there at one point, was this just a job and And it's like, you know what? If I'm going to be here, let's make this a career. What's the difference in mindset? Is it a growth mindset?
I think definitely growth, but I think when I started out as a discharge planner, and like, I mean, it was back when there was ads in the paper, right? It was an ad in the New York Times for someone to work for the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, right? And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Until like then I found out it was on Rikers Island, which I didn't know much about. And then even after that, it was like, okay, well, maybe I could just do this for a little while. I can't do this long term, right? But I think when you start to really engage in the environment and be a true student of the industry, like you start to learn about things and how things work and understand bigger picture and really see how your role plays into, someone's success. Once they transition out, like, I think for me, that's where there was a shift, that it was like, oh, okay, so I'm not just here kind of pushing paper, like I'm here making a difference. And then it began to matter to me that I was making a difference. So I think when you get to a point where it's not just I'm here to collect my paycheck, but like I'm here because there's something greater in this process, there's something greater in my contribution, that's when it became a career for me.
And I love that, because the contribution aspects matters, because I think that for me, as a job, I'm just going to go through the motions. But I think, like you said, when it becomes a career, it's like, okay, so if this is going to be my calling, and we'll discuss this later, so I don't want to get ahead of us, but it does touch on what you just said, is where's my service to others? What am I going to do for the bigger picture that's going to ultimately have that legacy or have that payback? But I don't want to go too far in that, because that's going to touch into something a little bit later on. But definitely for me, I realized it was a career the moment I went through the academy, because kind of superficial, but I wasn't going to do nothing like that for no reason. And then once I got in, I just enjoyed the job. I didn't get bored. To be honest with you, it didn't feel like work. I enjoyed it. And at that point here, I was like, you know what? Let's see what else this can offer me. And, again, I'm glad, because look where I'm at now. And, I'm proud of myself. I'm even the stuff that we're doing here. So, but again, it's the right mindset. It's the fact that you're willing to grow. So for me, the main component is, when you're coming in, are you willing to grow? If you're not willing to grow, then maybe it's just a job. But if you're willing to grow, it's a career. So I think that was a great tip that was provided. The first 10 are provided by Celeste. And the last bonus one, because, it costs more money because it's Connie. The last bonus tip, the last bonus tip comes from Connie. So, all right. So the next one we got is be willing to take accountability and responsibility. So what I'll do is I'll have Connie, if you can go first, and then I'll have an alternate. Then I'll have Celeste go second.
Sure. So for me, what this means is that when you're making rank, like, you have to know that you're going to be held accountable for your team, and you're going to be responsible for the decisions, as well as not only just their decisions, but yours. So whatever those outcomes are, just be prepared to own it, because I think that accountability it says a lot about you, I think, as a leader, sort of building that relationship and that trust, and really just owning the decisions, right? Like, because you're no longer able to say this happened because they did it, right? It was under your leadership. It was under your guidance. And so you can't just sort of shift blame and point fingers. And I think as a mark of a good leader, like, you're going to take the fall with your team, right? Like, you're not leaving your team over there to sort of struggle on their own. And it's like, okay, well, they only hold the consequences. And granted, after the fact, right, you may go to the team and say, hey, guys, listen, this is what we need to do looking forward, right? You pull the team together and show, like, I'm in it with you, not so much that it was them, right? And no upper management wants to hear that anyway, right? You need to be prepared to hold yourself accountable, because you can no longer say it was somebody else's fault.
Yeah, and Celeste, I'm sure you agree with this. I think this is, when you ask yourself this question, this has to be the one motivator that puts you in that gives you the want to move up. If you're not willing to take responsibility, accountability, then you're not ready for that promotion, in my opinion. But Celeste, what's your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are, you definitely have to be accountable and responsible for every decision you're making. in a leadership role. They're looking to you, your rank and file are looking to you for that guidance. And you're not going to leave them out in the cold. Not if you're a effective leader, you're not going to leave them out. You're going to make sure they are aware of your objectives, the mission that you're on at that particular time. You have to educate them in a leadership way so that they follow you into this battle, if you will. They're trusting you as she said earlier. They have to be able to trust you. If they don't trust you, they're not going to follow you. Okay. You are in control of how your duties are going to be performed and how you expect and relay those expectations to your team so that you complete the mission.
And can I ask the question? Says maybe I believe even when it comes to responsibility and accountability, especially the accountability part, you have to go in as a supervisor being humble. I don't believe you're expected to be perfect going in. I think there's also a part of growth in that as well. And I think accountability also is kind of saying that it's okay to admit that you yourself as a supervisor made some mistakes, correct? I mean, as a leader, shouldn't we have some level of vulnerability so that builds trust with the people we supervise so they themselves will admit it?
It definitely builds trust. You guys are leaning on each other. You can't succeed without each other. Even when you talk about the civilian side of it, your rank and file, you all have to work hand in hand to achieve the missions.
Yeah, and guys, to be honest with you guys, that's something we preach on this channel since day one. And I actually just did an article that just got published by the AJA, and basically on the importance of us working together. And that's kind of Connie's kind of helped me grow in that perspective. I think becoming an administration's helped me grow in that perspective, because I went from custody to one of my areas of responsibility was the program side of things. And, just to be seeing that there's dedication from both sides, and how do we get that to work together? And by the way, guys, when they gave me those areas of responsibility, they became my areas of responsibility, which means if they needed help, I stepped up. If they did something great, it was on them. If they failed, it was on us. It was just a great opportunity for, again, growth. It was, again, it kind of all falls down to growth. Okay, so Celeste, I'd like to go to you first on this one. You mentioned, I think this is a wonderful tip as well, because for me, this really is what builds confidence. But commit to consistency. What does that mean? Because real quick, before I mention the question, I want people to know consistency is not predictability. Consistency is kind of, I can be dependent on that. Predictable is being predictable. But Celeste, what's your thoughts on commit to consistency?
For me, it means show up, being present, being punctual. It's something about being on time. You have an opportunity to speak to someone, maybe the person leaving, you're coming on, you get a chance, an opportunity to exchange information. Okay. You need to be careful with your attendance. One thing is they depend on you if they see you there all the time. You're like a fixture. They know you're going to be there. They know you're going to help them. And that's important that they have. I think
that to me is probably very powerful as a supervisor, definitely as a leader, is consistency does come with the fact that you are there for them. And, you're not someone that just comes and when needed, you disappear. And actually that to me is probably one of the most important things that you can do as a supervisor, is be consistent with when you're needed, you're there and you don't look to run away, because there are some people that do that. Hey, Connie, what's your thoughts on commit to consistency?
I think that's a big one, because I think the staff need to know that you are going to show up, right? Like they don't want the wishy-washy you, right? Like, and I don't know, it's not about being predictable, but it's okay. I know that my supervisor does this. Like they stand firm, they are supportive. And so I think from the consistency perspective, they need to know that something goes down, my supervisor that I know is going to show up. They're not going to start backpedaling because the situation makes us all uncomfortable. And I think that's the thing we have to be very aware of, like as we're moving up rank, that folks are looking to you for that. Like, we can depend on this person to show up and be there. And like, if they need to roll up their sleeves, they will do that. So whatever that thing is, or those mannerisms, habits, whatever they are that you commit to, like, you just got to know, like, your staff is going to be looking for that when the time comes.
Yeah, and I like to add on something with that too, because I do believe this is a great tip that was provided. Consistency also brings confidence. That's one of the things that we talk about. That's why we need leaders that are consistent and not inconsistent, because consistent leaders kind of give us direction, and basically we know exactly what's our expectations. And the good thing about consistency also is inwards, we become confident in ourselves because we know where we need to be. And good consistent practices could also come from someone that's purpose driven. They know this is what's expected, and they stay true to those core values. So if you have good, strong core values, you could be definitely consistent. And that, again, consistency for me, number one confidence builder as a supervisor. And again, consistency is not predictability. It just means I can depend on you. But more importantly, consistency in yourself means you can depend on yourself. Because again, if you're not consistent with yourself, there's no way you're going to be consistent with others. Remember the term we talked about before, fair, firm, and consistent, Corrections 101? It's not really related to how the inmates see us. It's really how we see ourselves, and then how that translates into the outward behavior that impacts the inmates. All right, so we will go with Connie first on this one. This is another good one. They're all good, so I'm gonna say it for everyone just to kind of build up the the anticipation for it. But I love this. Be an example, be a model. Connie, what's your thoughts on that?
Oh my goodness. So the reason why I really like this one is because I think that in this space, in this management role, right? And as you move up rank, there are going to be some very trying times that you're going to have. And this made me think about, there was a time where we were having an issue and the warden just didn't understand. And there was all this stuff happening, right? And my nursing supervisor, I remember her coming in saying, Connie, you believe this shit? Like, she was so incensed, right?
Did you say shit? Hold on.
I didn't. See?
Connie has, maybe one more. You just said shit on YouTube.
I did. You see,
demonetized.
You had to highlight it, right? Like, you didn't have to do that. So she comes in and she's irate. She's so angry, and I was equally as upset. But the moment I would have stepped into her space and started to do that as well, like, the staff would have looked at me like, Connie, what's going on, right? Like, I think it's understanding that as you promote, like, you're kind of always on stage, and your staff are taking their cues from you. They're looking to see, how should we respond? How do we engage? So if I'm part of this whole division and I'm over here talking how awful this person is, like, they're looking at me like, oh, okay, well, that's how we allowed to get down, because our supervisor's doing it, so it's all good. But the fact that, like, I didn't jump into that, and it was kind of having to take on that role of reeling her in, right? Because the nurses were looking at her. So even me as administrator, I can go and say, hey, listen, this is what we're going to do moving forward. They're going to look at me like a hypocrite. Like, well, you was just back there cursing everybody out. How you come up here talking about, yeah, we're standing together, right? So I think the being an example really comes to play when you are faced with those tough moments, and you do have to kind of just toe the party line, whether you agree with it or not.
Yeah, I think everything you're saying is so powerful, because, again, as a leader, that example matters, because if you don't have it together, then you can't expect the people beneath you to, one, have it together themselves, but also to some extent be confident in you.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know, man. And what's funny? It's kind of a great way to kind of also seg into Celeste, because what's funny is we get overwhelmed in corrections. I mean, sometimes it could be an emergent situation, or sometimes it just could be the work that just doesn't end. And sometimes we may see somebody that's happy and smiling, and we may not think that they're overwhelmed with work, but they are. But they don't let it get to them, because, again, if they do, then what's that say? How can they help you when you get overwhelmed? So Celeste always seemed to have that smile no matter how overwhelmed she was. And I think it was a great example for other people to say, you know what? I know Celeste is doing all this work, and if she could still have a smile at the end of it, then why can't I? But But Celeste, this is a very powerful tip as well. What's your thoughts on this? Be an example, being a model.
Being an example is something that I always strive to be, not just professionally, but personally also. We're all faced with adversity. We're all doing a job that is difficult, to say the least. It doesn't mean that I was perfect. Certainly, I was not perfect. But I always wanted my reputation to precede me, meaning when someone said my name, there were certain things that were going to be attached to hearing my name. Uh, of course, I always tried to be fair. I always tried to be in service to not just my peers, but the rank and file, also administration, almost as if to say, how can I help? Because we're all doing something difficult.
And you know, she said something really key here, Connie. Maybe we could do a little follow up. What she said, I don't want it to go overlooked. Was you're being an example both ways. You know, I mean, there's a way to influence below and above. And she mentioned before, or Celeste just mentioned just now, and I don't want to overlook that. What she said, it's not even just about being an example to the people that are going to follow you, you know, your subordinates, but she also mentioned being an example to, let's say, admin. I mean, what's your thoughts on that in regards to the confidence they need to have in the leaders in those positions?
I mean, I think that's like initially when I thought be an example, because you always think about who's watching you, right? But I didn't think about those above who are watching you to see how you're conducting yourself. How are you handling yourself, whether it's good times or bad ones, right? Like, and I think, you know, to Celeste's point, you know, when you think about how you want people to think about you, right? Like, so when you say Connie, right, like what comes along with saying, oh, HSA Alleyne is coming, right? Is it, oh my God, HSA Alleyne is coming? Or is it, oh, we're going to have a good conversation. We're going to be able to work through this. So I think there's like so many gems in the midst of that I don't want us to lose sight of, because I think that's really great. When you have someone who's like an agitator, right? It's almost like when you hear that person's name, no one wants to be in the room when that person's coming, right? But then if you've got like that personality that sort of precedes you, you know, it's like, oh, there's like, yeah, you know, Major Evans is coming, Lieutenant Evans coming, whoever's coming, they're like, oh, she's coming, right? And they're looking forward to it. So I think that's really good, because then that goes to the consistency part and the commitment to that, who you are. But then that also says you are setting an example and people are looking at you and observing. You're muted.
Ah, damn it. Damn it. Yeah, whatever. 1-1. Guys, be advised, the examples on all levels too, because on a micro level, you're an example for your department. And sometimes, guys, we have generalized animosity, you know, custody this and social services that and admin this. But on a bigger level, macro level, whatever it is, now it's the agency. You know, so always being a good example on work, off work. I mean, it really does matter, but more so when you're in a position to influence others. Definitely got to maintain that good example. There's a great book out there by, here it is, by John Maxwell called The 360 Leader. Definitely would recommend it because it talks about exactly what Celeste mentioned and Connie complimented on, which is being a leader, a person of influence from all around. All around. Before we wrap up that thought, Celeste, any closing remarks on that one thought? Are we good to move to the next one? Because you brought it in and then we elaborate a little bit. So I wanted to give you maybe another chance to close off on it, or?
Well, I just want to say that it just seems that although we're giving tips on making rank and how to make rank, all these things work together. These situations and these tips work together to just help you be successful. I think they would apply in almost any situation if you just impart them into your daily routines.
Hey, Connie, we get that a lot, right? They say that some of the stuff that we do doesn't just apply to corrections. And I love that because it brings the worlds together.
Yeah.
I love the fact that you just said that. We needed that because we get that a lot, you know. I know some people may not watch the channel because, it's about corrections, but then they're really missing out on some good knowledge. Okay, so this one will go to Celeste first. Again, great tip. Learn from other supervisors that you respect the most. So what's great about this, guys, is that when I came in as an officer, I try to connect myself with like-minded people, especially because I did see this as a career pretty much from the get-go. So I didn't want my past to be something questionable that when I moved up, people would question my credibility as a supervisor. I think the same thing goes as a supervisor. We tend to be the people that we socialize with. Now, even though you may be new to being a supervisor and you're vulnerable and you may look to want to belong, that doesn't mean that you just connect with anybody. And to be honest with you guys, if you're really knowing that this is a career and you start to look up to where you want to be, you're going to start seeing some traits in these supervisors that you admire. So when you go to become a supervisor, you may find supervisors with those traits that can draw you to them. But I think this is another great tip. What's your thoughts, Celeste?
My most basic thought is, like you said, you want to emulate some of those characteristics that you see in them, helping them be successful, making you want to follow them. So if you're imparting those things into your situations when you move up, people will, want to follow you also. I was not a perfect officer. I wasn't a perfect sergeant. Actually, I wasn't a perfect lieutenant nor a perfect major. But I always strived every day to do better. Now, what I liked most about supervisors that I tried to emulate was that they did not waste energy. Wasting energy is just futile. Like, you're going into a situation, you need to bring that positive energy into it. You don't have time to say, oh, woe is me. Oh, we can't do this. No, you need to infuse positivity into that situation and don't waste energy and time. Okay, you have to be efficient.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, guys. Because let me just close clip there, guys. In the end, guys, for me, I want to add a thought before I get Connie in, is that I've been next to some really good supervisors in my career. Good supervisors that to me not only motivated me but inspired me. And actually, even not even just supervisors, senior officers when I was a rookie. Senior officers when I was a rookie, I never had people that did the sink or swim, if that's the case, where it kind of put me out and never had my back. Even as I moved up into the admin, the person next to me, she cut off my wings, gave me freedom to fly, but was always there, but she wanted me to be able to make decisions, but not feel that someone's over your shoulder, but then also not let you fail. And I think to me, that's one of the gifts I connected to with the supervisors who brought me into this profession, was that they allowed me freedom, but did not allow me to fail. They gave me confidence in decision making, but still had my back. And, we lose out on that still. I wish we can get more of that, but unfortunately, I wish there were more people like that. But right now, it seems to be lessening, but doesn't mean they're not there, but they're harder to find. Connie, what's your thoughts on what Celeste said? I mean, this is really just another great tip, right?
Yeah, I think so. So especially if you've not been a supervisor before, you don't really know what you're doing. Because I think that was it for me. When I first became a supervisor, I was like, y'all don't want me to be a supervisor. I don't know what I'm doing. Right. But then I looked at like supervisors that I was like, wow, I like working with this person. Right. Like, they speak to me with respect. They explain stuff to me. There were all these things that I could pull from that experience with a good supervisor that I thought was just great. And so when I finally became a supervisor, I was like, not only am I not prepared for this, but I better look at somebody who's doing it right. Right. And it's not to say they were perfect, and it's not to, and certainly I think over time, right, we all evolve. So as I matured, as I saw how, in this situation, you might use this tone of voice, or you might use these words, or there's like all these little intangibles that like you can glean from that supervisor who you just are kind of just watching their moves, right? You're watching, so how does he get down when he's under pressure? Or, what happens when someone says something to him that, like the regular person might want to be able to give the side eye or say something, but he's not responding to that. And so what is it in him that helps him control himself in these situations. So I think this is a great tip, because I can think of the person right now who, like, I looked at was like, oh my goodness, like I was in awe with how in command of himself he was in order to lead us. And I didn't think I could do that. I was like, oh my God, there's no way I'm ever going to be able to do that. But like maturity, right? And experience and everything else gets you there. And so you got to have a little grace with yourself as you're growing through this process, right? But I mean, certainly having an example that you can kind of take some tips from, I think is amazing.
Yeah, and I think when you cross into that initial supervisory position, it could be hard because that's the first time you're really truly going to be responsible for the actions of others. I'm not going to say it's going to be that much easier, because then the next step you become, you may have to discipline the others. I mean, so each step up does create a bit of a challenge. But definitely to me, the first initial jump, you're going to find yourself wanting to find the right role models, be that example, and just kind of try to figure out your way, because this is what's going to determine most of your career. Because when you start to move up and you start to progress, this first jump becomes that major milestone into that world. So having said that, connecting yourself to that initial impression, the people that you're going to meet when you're vulnerable, when you first made a supervisor, don't just pick anybody, because this could be the foundation of where everything branches off from. So having good people, good role models will develop you into something great. But if you connect to the wrong people, you're putting something good on a shitty foundation, So again, guys, you got to be careful who you connect with. I would recommend keeping it just the right people all the way, so you always have a strong foundation when you're building on something good. Because I'll tell you something, guys, the people that are questionable and you connect with them at the beginning, and then even later on, if you try to do something good, the foundation's shit. And it just doesn't hold up as it would if you would have stayed the course the whole way through. And again, it kind of touches on what we talked about before. If this is a career for you and you know it, treat it like one from day one. That's key. This is another good tip. I believe we do Connie first on this one. And this is something I believe starts as day one as an officer, or as a civilian staff member coming into the profession. But definitely more intense as you start to move up. But familiarizing yourself with the admin codes that govern your department. Connie, what's your thoughts on that, especially as a supervisor?
Oh my God, like you have no choice. I think you can't even operate unless you understand the codes that are governing your department. So, I mean, I think, yes, coming from medical, right? Medical has all of its stuff, coming from a third party. So like our contract was under UConn at the time. And so, yes, there were expectations, policies, procedures that governed UConn. But then there was also, here's what's governing the department in facility, right? And if you don't know that, you could be jammed up in so many different ways, whether it be inmate requests that you get for stuff that you don't realize are not appropriate for your department to handle, and then you should be redirecting them somewhere. Then you give somebody something you shouldn't give them because it shouldn't have come from you. I mean, I think there's a laundry list of things that could go wrong when you don't understand the codes that govern your department, and especially in the sense of sort of the medical mental health space. Like, we have to understand what our partnership is supposed to be like with custody. I mean, I think of times where prior to now, if someone was exposed to something, right? There was a bite, there was a splash, there was something, there was always discussion. Are we supposed to tell custody? Should we not tell them? There's all this stuff. And so there are now, rules and regulations and stuff in place to help us navigate those decisions, as opposed to, us sort of just making the judgment call. Whereas I think if you don't know, you can really get yourself in a world of trouble. So you have to find yourself and find the time to learn it. And I think a lot of times, especially from a civilian space, if there was stuff I didn't understand, it wasn't okay for me to not know it. And so I would just advise that as you are in this space, if you don't know something, go ask someone, what is the interpretation? What does this mean? and what does it mean for your department? That way you're never sort of acting out of turn.
Yeah, that's powerful. And guys, remember, just to piggyback a little bit on what Connie said is, got to know them because you got to enforce them. And I want to mention one other thing before we go to Celeste is that when it comes to the policies and procedures, that's also your defending position in case you have to stray off once in a while, because we are working in a profession where sometimes discretion has to be employed, and the more you know policy and procedure, the better you can defend your position. One, if policy and procedure doesn't help, and that's actually how we evolve, because policy and procedure should never be written in stone. But damn well, when you defend your position, you have to start where that policy and procedure failed. And that could even help the team in case we have to kind of stray a little in an effort to bring things back to policy and procedure. But Celeste, what's your thoughts on that? Because this is another one very important.
Well, Tony, you and Connie elaborated so well on the point. I'm just going to be brief. Knowledge is power. Okay, you have to. This is your career. It's your baby. The only way you're going to take care of it is to know your guidelines, your boundaries, your timelines, because certain things have to happen in certain time. You have to report things in certain time. So you just want to be as knowledgeable as you can to keep yourself and your employees covered. You're covering yourself. You're protecting yourself, even if it comes down to knowing the criminal codes, like what could put you in a criminal liability situation. You need to know and educate yourself on these things, because this is serious business. As you move up in the ranks, your responsibility is growing exponentially. So the higher up you go in rank, the more people, the more situations you're responsible for. And the only way to navigate and manage those things are to remain knowledgeable and to keep obtaining knowledge.
Hey, Connie, I know you want to attack something she said, which was so perfect. And let me see if I'm right, because she said something we cannot overlook. And Connie, tell me if I'm right when I say it. When she said you make rank, your responsibilities grow exponentially. I saw her. Connie, I know you want to add something on that. What's your thoughts on that? Because I saw it.
This honestly, there's nothing to add to that, because I think, people think that as you move up, that you have that you don't have more accountability and more, like you can just delegate everything, and it just doesn't work that way. As you move up, your level of accountability, responsibility, it just soars, because anything and everything that goes wrong falls under your scope, and you've got to be able to address it. You need to have an ear to the ground. You have to know that it happened. You got to hope that people aren't hiding stuff from you. There's just so much, like the laundry list of liabilities that you hold under your belt when you've got tons of people out there working. It just continues to grow. So, I mean, that is just spot on.
Yeah, 100%. But again, guys, sometimes you never. That's why we have dialogues. We don't prepare anything, because you never know what's going to come up through this dialogue. And again, guys, don't overlook that either. I agree with that, because when one of the decisions I had when I was going to make rank, someone pulled me aside and said, "Make sure you're willing to take responsibility." And believe it or not, that question has never left me each time I move up. And trust and believe, as I move up in these higher positions and I scramble more, it's because my responsibilities are more. I mean, you should think that the things I solve now that I would never have to solve as an officer, But again, yeah, 100%. And one thing she also touched on too is there is liability in it all. She's mentioned it's a serious business. It is. It deals with most of the time the rights of the employees, the rights of the inmates, and once you take on that responsibility, you are responsibility to make sure those things are carried out, and your name will be on those lawsuits. And the department will back you if you're doing what's right. But if you're not doing what's right, they will not back you, and then you will be taking responsibility of that, just not in the way you want, which could lead to removal at the least of your concerns. Okay, so the next tip is great, and we'll start with Celeste first. Another great tip. Okay, so this was a tip that we worked together on. So let me explain where I had a misconception real quick. All right, and I'm not way off on it, but very limited in my thinking. So when I wanted to move up, I had a senior officer asking me, what's your purpose behind it? And at first I did have two superficial reasons. One was I didn't want certain people becoming my boss. I'm going to be honest with you. Yeah, okay, good. We're on the same page with that. Okay, thanks. I appreciate that. And the second one was yeah, there's gonna be a little bump in pay and whatever it is. And then as you move up in responsibilities, you start to ask yourself, man, the pay's not really worth it. So I used to tell people, and I still agree with this to some extent, but there's another. I want to add something on this that Celeste is going to add. But you're going to go through a lot of stuff. To be honest with you guys, if your sole reason to move up is based on that little bump in pay, I'm not saying it can't be part of it now, but if it's your sole reason, it may not be strong enough. Trust me, trust and believe. You're going to go through a lot of shit where the money just does. It's just not enough. But having said that, there's a caveat to that, and I'm going to have Celeste bring that in.
Okay, well, let me just say, first of all, the career choice can be thankless. Like Tony said, look, the paycheck, the little bump in pay may not be enough to sustain your decision to move up. But my last promotion, I was thinking of my pension. I wanted that extra bump in my pension, and I figured if I moved up to major, I could affect some change, make some lasting situations better in the facility that I was at, which I think I did. But definitely, there was a little bit of an external factor in that I thought my pension was going to increase, and it did.
Yes, and guys, as you retire, that little bump does it does show pretty good in a pension, correct?
Absolutely, it was definitely worth it for me. Look, later on in my career, especially once I promoted up to lieutenant and then to major, I really thought of this service as a calling. I was called to help and to educate. And I definitely tried to do that with every function that I was performing.
And let me ask the question before I go to Connie to comment on this, just out of curiosity, because for me, it's like you never left the game. When was the last time you taught corrections?
Tony, actually, I haven't taught corrections. I mean, it's been a while. Like, it's really been a while. I do still have a few friends that are still on the job, but we don't talk about the job.
How does it feel right now, like doing it this way?
You know what? This is actually awesome and refreshing. And again, I'm still taking it from a position of service. Like, I just want to help if I can, help someone else if I can.
Well, you will. Everybody that watches this. Hey, Connie. So I don't know what's that's a new change in our perspective there, Connie. External incentives, but that pension, because you smiled, you know that's true.
Listen, I think big picture, when you know, like if it's part of your exit strategy, right? And you're thinking, I'm still going to I'm going to provide my service. I'm still giving 100%. There's no reason why I can't exit. So you're thinking retirement, with, the right setup for yourself, because you're not going to be working anymore. And I mean, I guess selfishly, I can agree that after all of the sacrifice, commitment, everything that you've given to the industry over the years, I mean, 25 years is a long time, right? And so I would assume that as you plan your exit strategy, you want to make the most of whatever benefits you're going to get. And this is not because the organization just decided to give you something, right? Like, you worked for it. And so I don't see that there's anything wrong with being smart about how you exit. So while I'm thinking external, I also feel like you've already earned the right to sort of make sure you're set up appropriately once you're leaving the profession. You were saying something, Celeste?
Yes, I just wanted to say one other thing. Also, I was certain I was not promoting above my ability to be effective. Like, I wasn't moving into a title or position that I could not handle or I could not perform.
Mm-hmm.
So that's important. Like, if you can't be a major or you can't be a sergeant, then you probably shouldn't promote to that level. It should definitely be within the realm of your ability to be effective in that role.
You know what's funny? That actually may be a good thing for a whole show. Knowing when to kind of stop going for it within those capabilities doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It just means that, 'cause there are some times when I question my ability. Have I reached the Peter principle, if you will? Am I at that last level? But again, I love what you said, because I wanted to mention something before we close on to this tip on the other one. But Connie and Celeste, we've got to do that topic. I'm going to take note of that, and we're going to revisit that on the whole show, because that's not something that's I think can be put into a quick little tip, because that's going to be a dialogue. But with that said, I want to add something with the. You notice that when we said it, we still didn't make the sole reason to get that extra money in the pension. Celeste had said two things, and also Connie had complimented it as well, was that you still want to make your difference. You still want to create your impact, and then you added the other part of that, which is full round circle, was, am I capable? So you're not just chasing the money. So I want people to realize that you're not just chasing it. It's, can I still do something effective in this position? Am I capable? And if so, then why not? Why not? What's stopping me? So if I can add on that, it's the comfort zone. Sometimes we get used to saying, you know what, I'll just retire it out. I've been in this position for so long, and I know I could do it, but I just want to stay here because I got weekends off now, and I got whatever it is. And, no, sometimes, guys, maybe if you could do the job, you're capable, stretch out of your comfort zone, because it will be rewarding. Sure, you'll be inconvenienced for a year or two, whatever it is, but in the end, it matters. So I think that was a full good roundabout there. That was well done. But definitely want to explore that one thing on a future episode. I thought that would be pretty interesting. Okay, so now we go to Connie first. Connie, this is another good one, because this is where this is going to test you. This is probably the thing that's going to test you the most when you make rank, especially if you work in the same facility where you were frontline or lower level. Realize you will supervise former peers.
Yeah. So, I think so. The challenge comes, of course, for your peers to no longer see you as their peer, right? But to see you as their supervisor and respect you as such. But I think in order for that transition to really happen and happen successfully, you have to stop conducting yourself as the peer, and you've got to be able to show up as a supervisor. I don't think there's anything wrong with having a conversation with your once peers to even just openly talk about it, because I know when I first got promoted to health services manager, I was supervising 5 of my peers. Like we were cool. We were hanging out for lunch. We would do and I was like, oh my God, this is going to be hard. Like, how do I hold them accountable for time and attendance? How do I do this? Because then I also had to shift from, I'm not just the frontline employee anymore. And while they're still experiencing the things that I once experienced, I still got to hold them accountable, right? And so there were some tough conversations that I had to have, especially with those I was closest to, because the last thing you want is for your once peers to be constantly undermining you or second guessing you or, throwing things at you, right? So I always felt like the last thing I needed was to be conducting myself in a certain kind of way. And now I'm a supervisor and they're looking at me like, oh, but look what you used to do. Look at the things you used to say, right? So that example, it kind of always brings me back. I didn't necessarily know that I wanted this to be my career, but I also knew that there was possibilities for growth. And with that, I knew I didn't want to stay in one position. So I never wanted it to be that I was down with the stuff, right? Like I'm not trying to throw nobody under the bus, and I never do that, right? But like all the stuff that happens in the background of stuff that most supervisors usually don't know. Like I think it is being able to say, hey, listen, I'm stepping into this new role. This is what it looks like. And like try to get some understanding. And there's going to be times where there is no understanding, right? Where they're going to kind of push back. Like, Connie, come on, just give us a break. You know what's up. No. Like we're not going to do that either, because it sort of still keeps me as a peer, right? And so if the intention is to be able to grow and learn and truly embrace all of the accountability and such that comes along with that, I had to be able to step aside and be like, okay, well, here's where we at now. And when, for those who couldn't move forward, then we ended up in sessions together, right? Where it became a interesting conversation that you didn't want it to turn into some sort of discipline or anything, but sometimes that's what it is. And that's sometimes the wake-up call that folks will get, like, oh, and of course then it's, oh, look at her now, right? Like, so, but it's just knowing it's part of what happens when you supervise your former peers. It's going to be some growing pains. There will be some times where there's utmost respect, there's times where there's not, and you as the person who now moved up have to be able to adjust accordingly.
Yeah, and you know what's great? I want to compliment something on that, is that, so sometimes people use the word remember your roots. And I get it. If we're going to use it in an effort for me to grow and evolve, because I think when you become a supervisor, you don't change, you evolve, you grow. I got something on a daily reader coming up. I don't like the word change. I think change kind of minimizes, maybe past efforts, when everything really is a growing process. So when people say remember your roots, it should symbolize an evolution. But sometimes when they say remember your roots, it's really to manipulate you not to be that role that you're supposed to be in. So for people that say, guys, if you're watching this, remember your roots, it doesn't mean that the person's going to go backwards now, and not hold you accountable. Remember your roots is taking the foundation and continue moving. And I'll tell you guys, when it comes to being a supervisor, it's hard to bring people up into our perspective. And it is. You have to be willing to do that. And it's not about us coming down. It's not about, hey, remember your roots, okay, I get it. Let's be fair, though. After I know the roots, I know where we're coming from. But now come with me now for a little bit so you can see where I'm at from this perspective. Because when you start to move up, you see things that cannot be unseen. You see things that most people will never see. So when someone from a supervisor tries to give you that explanation, you have to realize that that explanation is big and vast. Maybe a little bit larger than you thought was, because again, your perspective could be somewhat limited. So before someone says, remember your roots, remember what that's supposed to mean. It doesn't mean to put someone back and keep them there. That's not what it's about. It means, how do you take what you've learned in the past and make yourself better as you move forward? Sometimes I find it's used as a manipulative tool to make the person not play that supervisory role if need to be, if they need to play that role. Hey, Celeste, what's your thoughts on realize you'll supervise your former peers? It is tough, correct?
It is tough, but listen, you and Connie made some excellent points. I'm just going to say that when you talk about your peers, maybe they're even some of them your friends, most of them are going to be in support of your position. Okay, meaning they're not going to want to do anything detrimental or make you look bad as their leader, especially if they're truly following you. Okay, but I just want to go back to some other points that we made. Okay, if you've been consistent, you've been an example, you've been taking accountability and responsibility, like if those were your roots, you're going to bring the other people along.
Wow, that guys, right there is where it hits home, because again, that starts from day one. We talked about having a good foundation. So that does start from day one. Again, if this is a career, you got to see it going in day one, because you don't have a second chance at a first impression. And sometimes those first impressions, they set you back and you may never be able to recover from. You could see, and again, Celeste, you can go.
Well, I'm going to say again, I wasn't perfect. Of course, I goofed off. Of course, I did some things that might not have been in line with the mission of the facility at the time. But my core foundation was just as I said, with those things that I said, being consistent, being accountable, being responsible, all of that. Like I said, if those are your roots, you're going to bring the other people along that are not in support of you moving up.
Yeah, I love that. And guys, just one last thing to close off that thought. The hardest thing ever going to happen is you may have to write up an individual, I mean, don't get me wrong, constructive effort first, but when they become a liability, you have to step up. It's going to be the biggest test you'll ever have to do as a supervisor, because that's when you're going to realize, can I do it? Not that you want to do it, but can I do it? It never gets easier, but because as a supervisor, are you able to remove the emotion behind it and play the role that you're supposed to play at that point? Because even when you find yourself not wanting to write that person, knowing that you should, you got to realize something. It's going to affect the team. And at this point, you're responsible for the outcome of the team, not just that individual. So when you get tested to that point where it's like, can I write this person? Remember, the question that you're asking is based on the role you're at. So if I'm a supervisor and I have to write this person because if I don't, it's going to affect the team, the answer is simple. I have to. Because I've tried constructive measures, it's not working. I got to get to the discipline because now it's going to become a liability, and obviously the team's picking up on the slack. But if you're having a problem answering, no, like this issue has to be done, it's like, well, I'm in conflict with it because you're in the wrong role. You're seeing the write-up as a friend and not as the role you have to play to help the team. And again, hopefully the people like Celeste mentioned, the people that see you as a supervisor now, because again, maybe you were peers or friends with them before, they understand that. And any effort to hold you back kind of makes you question your relationship to begin with. Anybody have closing thoughts on those last two spots, Connie or Celeste? You do, Celeste? What do you got, Celeste?
Well, discipline is part of your responsibility as a supervisor. It's part of it. You're taking on that role. You're accountable. You're responsible. And sometimes discipline is a teaching tool. If a person does something wrong, they may not even recognize or acknowledge that they've done something wrong, and discipline may be the way to bring them into that light.
Yes. See, that's spot on, because I think some people realize, I guess they're scared of the word discipline, but technically discipline at first is constructive until you've exhausted the effort. So as a supervisor, remember the punitive part of a discipline measure is a last resort when you have tried all efforts, and at that point you just haven't been successful. Okay, we're on number 9. This is unique. I'm curious to see where you're going to go with this. Now, I believe we do. Is it Celeste first? I was right. Okay, good. All right, and then we got Connie. Okay, I want to make sure because we're kind of, I got to keep track of so many things, guys. There. Why are you rolling your eyes on that one, Connie? By the way, guys, Connie does party. I have pictures on Facebook. There you go, Connie.
Oh my God.
This is joking. She doesn't, guys. She's strictly business. Civilians Correction Academy 101. Hey, Celeste, what's your thoughts on connect with peers?
I'm going to try to be brief, but what I mean by connecting with peers, and these are people that are promoting with you. You'll find that there'll be a core group of people promoting up at the same time. You'll find yourself with the same group of sergeants that are then lieutenants that may also be majors or beyond. Okay. So these peers of yours, they have experiences and talents that have helped them advance and could possibly help you advance also.
Yeah, I think that's powerful. I believe that. You know what's funny? So since I moved up, whatever it is, I do bump into people that have been part of the same class, and some are just as successful. And again, by the way, successful is subjective. Successful is not positional. Successful is subjective. All because I made this rank and someone else, let's say, has remained an officer, that doesn't mean that they're less successful than me. There could be many reasons why they wanted to keep that way. Maybe they're successful in their personal side of things. We don't know, but never walk in because you achieve a position think you're more successful than someone else. Humble yourself. But I have seen people like, hey, 193, doing good. Hey, good to see you up there, and showing that support, and then also seeing their journey. Maybe they were an officer, now they're a sergeant or a lieutenant. It's still a step above. And at the end of the day, it's like great, sharing it and then being able to connect, because you do have that impact with each other, because there's that connection of, for us, it would be an academy, but just coming in together and, 20 years later, how far you traveled. I think it's pretty cool what you said there, Celeste. Hey, Connie, what's your thoughts on that from that perspective?
So, I don't know. I guess part of me thinks about it from the perspective of, so you promote up and then you may not have already had some sort of relationship or dealings with your people who are your peers now, who technically were a supervisor of sorts prior to. And so I know that when I did get promoted, sort of creating that connection, I guess, with my new peers, I had to be intentional about it. And so I would just say that as you move up, you know, don't allow like that intimidation factor or the fear of sort of establishing a relationship with your peers to be something that stops you, right? Like, because they are your peers now, and it's important that you connect with them because they can help guide you through too. Like, they knew what it was like to just start, right? Like, they knew they know what you're going through. And so I think that connection also allows you to bond in a different way, right? Like, the same way I bonded with the people I first came in with, I also bonded with other HSAs. And then we were able to share what we were experiencing in different facilities, which helped inform me on how, oh, here's another way I can deal with this thing because it was successful when they did it over there. You know, so I think that that connection is really important. You just have to kind of get past that. Maybe there's a little uncomfortableness in the beginning as you get to learn them, but it all works itself out.
Yeah, Celeste, I saw you in agreement with that. What are some of the? I know you probably have some thoughts you'd like to add on that. That was well said, Connie.
It really was. Like, I'm wondering, where were you when I was in corrections?
You know what? Can I tell you something?
Where you were.
Everybody says that. They don't know. It's like, but no one cares about me.
Because sometimes
they love
I felt
you.
like I was alone out in the ocean, you know.
but yeah, that's
Like,
a good tip, Celeste.
It really is, because like I couldn't be successful as a lieutenant without, just going to put some names out. I hope they don't mind. Like, if Bigham wasn't there, if Polly wasn't there, like I couldn't have been as successful in my mind, because again, they each had talents that I could draw from to make myself more successful.
Not today. Yeah. But yeah, and it's great to be able to have that, you know, because I think that also establishes a trust. And you know what's great, guys, that we're also not letting people see that, or we could let people see from this, is the fact that once you see that trust and that connection, the inmates see it too. You know,
Yes, you're a united front.
you're united
You're a
front. So
united
even
front.
when Celeste mentioned about being an island, that's not something you want the inmates to see. So you should reinforce what you guys have said, is that connection built on similar experiences, similar roads. And you couldn't have named two finer individuals. I actually interviewed Polly a while back, and I haven't seen Bigham for years. But you know that Lieutenant Bigham gave me advice. He may not even know this because he was my training lieutenant. And he may not even know this. Okay, so I have a book on the market, the Inmate Manipulation Decoded book, right? So I think his advice is quoting this, but it's something that I live by every day. And he told me right at the very beginning, to everybody in class, but just been stuck with me. No matter the capacity, if you're ever thinking about an inmate when you're at home, you're too involved. And it just stuck with me for my whole career. I don't know. He probably doesn't even know that, but it was really spot on advice that just was just right in the moment, powerful. And I don't know if you still talk to him, you know, it'd be great to let him know that maybe we'll have him on the show one day. Screw it, let's have a reunion. You know, a
Awesome.
reunion. And actually, his wife's my classmate.
I will definitely pass that along.
Shout out to the Bighams and the Magnums. But yeah, very good people, guys. Magnum was a definitely a big supporter of mine the whole time I was at Edna Man. Just a very wonderful woman, very supportive. And she told me stuff that stayed with me for the rest of my life. She said that, Gangi, you have such a unique mind. Most people will not see what you see, but don't change who you are. And she and listen, guys, I don't mean to be specific, but it is a powerful moment. She told it to me when she was an officer in Ackerman. That's how
Wow.
powerful that moment was to me. And I remembered it because I needed it. It was timely. And the funny thing is, sometimes you don't even know what you need until someone says it. So if she
Mhm.
sees this video, I remember that. And obviously for the training thing, but it's powerful.
That was powerful. I just want to say I don't want to leave anyone off. I just wanted to just name two really quickly. Like they embraced me the moment that I got there, and I just wanted to shout them out. But there were many more. I don't want to discount anyone's contribution to
Oh,
my
we could.
career there for sure.
You know what, Celeste? We have many more shows.
Right. But as you said about thinking about, the job when you get home, just one quick thing. I picked up my armor on my commute to the prison and conversely released that armor on my way home. So you really have to leave it there. You really have to leave it there for your own peace of mind, sanity, family, home life. You have to leave it there.
And what a great segue. I'll wait first. And also, Connie, you have any closing thoughts on that one?
Nope, I think we're good with that.
Okay. Now, this is the final. Well, we have a bonus after this, but this is the final original for the 10 tips. And this kind of crosses into what Celeste just said. Now, sorry, ladies. Who goes first? Is it
Connie,
Connie?
let Connie go first.
Okay. Oh, you're right, Connie. So, Connie, here's the tip. Pace yourself. Strong support system. And I want to do, after Connie speaks, I want to give a caveat to remind me of with the armor off and on. I have a caveat that this Celeste I'd like to add on.
So the pace yourself side of this, I think, is really important because I think that, stepping into the new role can be very overwhelming, right? And so I think when we're on the front line, we think we know all, we think we know everything, right? Until you step into that next role and you realize just how much you didn't know, just how much more you have to learn. I think when you move up in rank, you see the bigger picture of things and you start thinking globally. You start thinking how to like there's pieces that need to connect that you didn't even know the pieces existed. And so I think when you step in and try to do everything and you try to be excellent in everything, the master of like it just stop, right? Like allow yourself to take in the lessons, to reflect on those lessons, to really just understand the magnitude of the lessons and the ripple effect of your actions as you step into that role. And so the support system, the strong support system in this space to me really means people who you're going to be able to go and talk to about the challenges or the frustrations or the insecurities that you might have, right? Because that imposter syndrome, the imposter syndrome sort of steps in for everyone when you're first new, right? You're like, oh my God, I don't know nothing. I'm not going to be able, the self-doubt, all of that negative self-talk that kind of comes in. And so you need a positive and strong support system who's going to be able to pull you out of that, who's going to be able to speak encouragement and just speak life, right? Because there's times where you're not going to be feeling yourself. You're not going to feel like you can do the job. And so, yes, it can be overwhelming. Yes, there's a lot to learn. Yes, you're going to make some mistakes, and that's okay. That's part of the learning and growing process. But when you have a strong support system and not necessarily internal to the facility, right? Because sometimes folks in the facility are so knee deep in all of the politics and bureaucracy and all that other stuff, they can't really give you what you need to help feed sort of that space in you that needs growth, right? So that support system in my mind is people who are going to help pull you out and help encourage you and help bring you into a space of where they're just letting you know that you got this.
Yeah, I love that. And I want to add something, but I want to hear Celeste's thoughts first. And I want to compliment something that Celeste said in regards to the armor off and on. But I want to make sure it's an understanding. Well, let me just go off this first because we may want to explore this a little bit. So I learned something. I learned that there is I would also say this doesn't just affect those in uniform, but I think Connie would agree this also could affect those that are civilians as well. But I do believe there are some pressures on the job, and sometimes we may not allow ourselves to feel in the moment, because obviously the job may expect us to act, and later on when the moment occurs, it passes, and you don't really process it through, and it just starts to mount up. So then when you get home, maybe you start to shift, I don't know, or maybe you close that part off and you don't tell your loved ones who know how to talk to you as Anthony and not Officer Anthony, or, Connie Alleyne as opposed to Miss Connie Alleyne or Major Evans. So I think there's some level where if there are concerns, there's what the job could support you. I get it. Of course, it could be there and they can give you the love and support you need. But there's also a level of vulnerability that you may not want to express with them that you can express with your loved one because they see you outside the uniform. And the reason why I feel there should be some level of that, as long as it's safe and controlled, is if you don't do it, what's going to happen is you're going to change a little over time, and then your family doesn't know how to help you because they don't know who you are anymore. So I believe there could be some balance with I may be having some issues at work, but how do I go ahead and express that to my family so they're in a position to help me? It's not so much of, helping Officer Gangi. I'm not asking for help as Officer Gangi. I'm just saying, babe, before I got on this uniform, you know who I am. How can this help me? What can you do to help me get through an inmate suicide, whatever it is that they may not feel comfortable discussing at work. Now, does that make sense? A little bit of I don't want to say anything against what you said because I agree with what you said, but I think there's a caveat to that.
Absolutely. There absolutely is. You definitely have to take a minute. Reflection is definitely key. I mean, you're pacing yourself. It's a long career. Okay. They're going to be setbacks, ups and downs, triumphs. Okay. You need to take a moment to refuel your spirit, if you will, recharge yourself. Okay. I found for myself, being as true and as close to my true self, my true personality, that worked for me. So I didn't have to pretend or put on a different facade for work. What you pretty much saw there was very much like my own personality at home. That served me. It's important. It's important that you have a moment to mentally decompress from everything that's going on there. And again, that drive home, I use that to do it. I mean, some people, their support system, okay, it may come from friends or peers at work who definitely understand what they're going through on a day-to-day basis. Sometimes it's your family, it's your spouse, okay? But they can only go to a certain point if they're not on the job with you. And if they are on the job with you, you may not want to discuss job issues because it just overlaps and it's just too much. For those people who may think there's a stigma attached to it, you may even benefit from some talk therapy. Whatever you need to get yourself through that long career, then you need to employ those methods.
You said something great I don't want to leave behind before we go on this last tip, the bonus tip. And I don't know if both you ladies want to comment on this. But I want to touch on something that maybe could also be another show, but maybe we could touch on it briefly here, was that maybe there's a part of you that needs help in regards to being effective in the profession, the job side of it all. But then there's a part that may need help on the human side of it all. This is Anthony and not Officer Anthony. So is there a balance with that approach? Maybe I'll go with Connie first, then Celeste. But Connie, you get what I'm saying? I mean, there's parts of, okay, I just went through this. My concern is how am I going to be more effective at the job? Well, maybe, us as peers, we can help with that. But what about if it's something where the person feels that they're becoming callous to certain things, like, an inmate committing suicide, or let's say you go through all these inmates, suicides, whatever, and eventually you have a family member that does it and you can't find the emotion behind it because you've just been you're just disenfranchised, it just doesn't affect me anymore. I've seen so many. So maybe that part is the human side of it all. Like, Tony, you're changing. When I married you, you were more open, you were more loving, and now you're becoming this. Is there a way to balance that? Connie, I'll have you go first. I know Celeste would probably have something to say too. You're muted. Connie, you okay?
Yes. Okay, you got me. Um, I'm just thinking, as I think about it, it's an awareness. I think it's important. So I think it kind of goes back to your support system, right? So there are people who know you better than anybody else, right? And so when you have those people who are speaking to you from a place of love, who have seen a shift in you, whether it's in your personality, it's your mannerisms, whatever it is, I think that as the individual who's walking that walk behind the wall daily for all these years, you have to know that the walk impacts you, right? It just does, right? In ways that will show up differently, I think, for everyone, right? And so there's nothing wrong when you have your support system in place to help keep you grounded, to help remind you of who you are, or even to raise the awareness that there's been a shift, there's been a change, and here is sort of your wake up call to that change. And so you have the ability to either keep going in the direction you're going or to be intentional about bringing you back, right? Like whatever that thing was that happened that sort of shifted something in you that made you be different, because you're aware now, you can decide, like, I don't want that for me, right? Like if all of a sudden you're short tempered, you're snappy all the time, right? You're snapping at your kids and your spouse is like, hey, what's going on, right? Like you can decide, like, listen, it is what it is, right? The job, I'm stressed, blah, 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 great. Or you can decide, hey, listen, yeah, I'm going to need to make some shifts because I don't like the way I'm speaking to my kids. I didn't realize I was doing that. And I think that's just it. I don't know so much that there's a balance, but I feel like when there is an awareness of it, you have the power to make a change, to make an adjustment.
I hope you know the walk impacts you. Another shirt we should make. That's another Tier Talk or Connie Alleyne Civilian Correction Academy shirt that you should make. The walk impacts you. I thought that was powerful. Celeste, what was your thoughts on what Connie said, right? The walk impacts you, huh?
Yeah, her comment was definitely powerful. But again, that's why you need that strong support system. That support system is going to help you remember your humanity, okay? And help you stay true to yourself. Because I didn't want those negative situations impacting my core personality. And I wanted to remain Celeste. I wanted to still be Celeste. It wasn't gonna help me come in with a stern look, a forceful walk. That's just not my way. It's easier for me to come in with my smile on my face, my positive outlook on life, and if I could infuse some of that into that negative space, that was going to help me reach my goal, complete my mission, my personal mission.
Yeah, I love that because you kind of make the determination of what you're going to give out and what you're going to let in. And that's how we survive. And I will say one thing before we get to the bonus tip is that I believe knowing yourself in this profession, and I got something coming up in my daily reader with this, is it kind of, if you know yourself well enough, you identify the subtle shifts because technically they're slow and subtle. You don't really notice it until the changes occurred. And also, if you're intentional with your growth, then you know what to hold on to and what to let go. If I know exactly where I want to be and who I want to be in this profession, I know exactly what it is I need to take and what it is I can let go. So again, but if you're going in with no North Star, no destination, just I'm going to go in and try, and I don't know who I am going in, the profession will take a hold on you. So again, it's a balance, guys. You are going to work into an environment that's not the best, but how you perceive that environment, what you do, that it's a balance of both. It's not just the environment, because the environment could have an effect on you. I get it, but there are people that know through a strong mind that there's limits that they're going to allow the environment to get. So having said that, having that balance matters. It's, yeah, we got the pressures of a negative environment, but what do we do to make sure we limit how that's going to affect us? And the key to that is know who you are. It's your foundation. And if you know who you are well enough, any shift matters. Your family will see it. Your family will see it. And if you don't, that's on you. That's not on nobody else. That's on you. All right. So for the bonus tip, we'll have Connie go first because Connie got one of my favorite bonus tips, of course, or one of my favorite tips for when someone's getting into the profession. I believe I have the book here somewhere. But without further ado, Connie comes in with the.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think for me, it is
You're muted, Connie. You're muted.
No, I'm not.
Oh.
So for me, the important thing is that you always remember why you came in profession and why you're moving up, right? Like, because you may not always, like, every day is not going to be a good day, right? There's going to be days that you wish you didn't take the job. You wish that you weren't there. Like, that's just the nature of it. I mean, whether it's prison or any other place that you might work, right? Like, they're just good and bad days. And I think remembering why you started and why you continued on the journey will be your internal motivation to keep going, as opposed to seeking that external sort of motivation to keep going. And, that's all I could say about
Unless
that.
you're going close for your pension.
Right. That's the only caveat, right?
It's caveat. Hey, but I think it's a great tip. Celeste, what's your thoughts on that internal why, your purpose?
Listen, just to piggyback on what you just said, sometimes that pension is motivating you through that day, that bad day that you're having. That pension is definitely a motivator. Like, help me get through this day.
So true.
Because I want that. But I just think that when you're like I was 21 years old. I definitely went into it not as a career. It was a job when I first got there. It was a step up from the job that I was doing. And I said, okay, I'm going to go and try this because, again, you're 21. You're basically unattached for the most part. You feel like you have time to recover from any mistake that you're about to make. And that's what it was. I was trying something different. And in the midst of trying something different, I found my true calling and career.
Yeah, and guys, what's powerful about this too is that even your why as a supervisor could still connect to your why coming in the profession. What's great about a why too is that it gives you something to connect to. Like, so if the agency has a vision or a mission, the why can find something that you can connect to that can keep you motivated through the roughest of times. And then you never know, through that shared purpose, you can connect with others and build a bond. And imagine having a team that has a great why. And also another thing about a good why, especially more so as a supervisor, is a why gives determination, commitment, whatever it is, a high level of commitment, because I believe commitments are by degrees. I mean, everybody's committed to something, but the degree of commitment. But with that said, a good, strong why makes it harder for an inmate to break you because your purpose is greater than, again, you have a purpose to serve others. So therefore, it's harder to move somebody with a strong foundation that, has that determination, has that purpose. So again, ability to connect, ability to not shift. But a why is definitely something that needed. And again, if you come in as an officer or a frontline professional and you work your way up, that why should always be consistent, because even as you move up, if it's a good why and a service to others, you can do that at any level of the profession, any level, even as a frontline professional, all the way to the higher level. And to be honest with you, it's not even about impacting the masses. Sometimes the best thing is just one-on-one. Just one-on-one. I think that's pretty cool. So closing thoughts. So we did it. We went through 10 plus the bonus, which was pretty cool. So Celeste, obviously we're going to be having you on again. Ask Connie. I get pretty annoying. But we try to do 2 a week. Do you have any thoughts for closing?
Anthony, you were definitely a firecracker when you came into the department. You were a sponge, absorbing every bit of knowledge and correction folklore, all of that. Like I was amazed. I was truly amazed. I was like, this guy has no idea what he's in for. But look, he's excited. He's excited, and you have taken that wonder and excitement and grown it. I'm truly proud. I'm proud of how you've turned out. The impact that you're making on your profession is astounding.
Thank you, Connie. How do you top
Yeah.
that, Connie? How are you gonna?
I'm not aiming to top that. Like, listen, I think at the end of the day, this journey, you know, as anyone who kind of goes up the ranks, I mean, so when I met Anthony, like this was we weren't here, right? We weren't here yet. And you know, I think since 2018 or 2019, I think that we've been working together, and even like the conversation has grown, right? It has changed. I mean, his awareness of just everything, anything. And it's not like the Anthony show for the people who are watching it, like, what's going on here, right? But it is just to say that as you move up the ranks, you grow, you evolve. There are things that you see that you didn't see before. There's experiences you've had. There's, you know, he had to go to some some proceeding. I was like, oh Lord, like he's in court for something. They got to depose him for something. I'm like, oh Jesus, right? And it's like these are the things that make us grow and learn as we move up the ranks, right? Like most frontline folks haven't had that experience of having to go stand up in court. I mean, unless they did something, right? Like having to go stand up in court and go through all of the motions and that level of accountability, and to be able to stand on your own and to know the policy and to know all of the PREA stuff, because he's all over PREA and all the craziness, right? But those are the things that I think make you strong, and it makes you continue up the ladder, right? So this for me has just been a great, I think, so being able to sit here with you guys and talk about it, I think has been great. But just seeing personally the growth of it all has just been awesome.
Yeah, and to compliment something that both you ladies said, one thing with the court is, even if you are in a court as a front line, most likely you're speaking more on behalf of yourself. Where when you go in at the higher level, when you're brought to court, you're speaking on behalf of people you may never even met.
Yeah.
But it's your responsibility because you represent the House, and you know it is a lot to take in. But having said that, Connie, Celeste, you know it is a growing process. You know, and the funny thing is, you will get to see things differently or see more things. But I think to end this, to say it correctly, as you move up, you have to also allow yourself to see it. There are some times when you try to push something bigger and people, they're resistant to it, whether they're just not capable of seeing it or they just don't want to see it. The point is, when someone's trying to give you the bigger picture, you have to allow yourself to see it. And that can come from all levels. As I said, you can influence up, you can influence down. It doesn't matter. But if you don't allow yourself to see the bigger picture, if you don't allow yourself to grow, or you don't want to grow, then don't make rank. I think to me that's the foundation. Do you want to grow? Because I'll tell you something. Connie said it, and Celeste definitely said it before. If you're not willing to grow, then you shouldn't move up. Because if you're not growing, then you're putting a lid on everybody else beneath you. I just want people to know that if you're not growing, you're putting a lid on everybody else beneath you. And just having said that, me and Connie, we've done a show for years now, you know, sitting next to her, seeing passion and dedication, knowing that it doesn't just come from custody, it comes from everybody who believes in what they do. So that's what unites us. We all believe in what we do on that common vision. No matter what the mission is to get to that vision, we all believe that the end result is that vision. So having said that, when you see somebody just as passionate, it's like, well, wait a second, then maybe I've been wrong. You know, maybe this myopic perspective that everything is this way and it has to be this way, maybe that's not the case. And then I had to allow myself to see that. Now I'm writing articles and trying to do things to bring things there, but it takes someone that you trust and respect to say, hey, Ganji, you're not seeing this right. You know, and then you kind of have to shut up and say, okay, well, tell me. And then it's like, wow, you know. But I will say one last thing. If you don't give yourself a chance to trust and respect the people that do that part, then you're never going to be open to listen to what they have to say. So again, you're going to close yourself off to a wonderful gift. And the wonderful gift at all, to me, is being put at this level to be able to kind of look at everything. To look at everything and to see the magic of what it really takes to run a correctional facility. And it's not just one department. It's everyone. So, as always, guys, the show is Tear Talk. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Stay safe.